So here's what I know about Yellowstone so far. It will not perform for you. It will not arrange itself to fit your schedule or your shot list or your expectations. The geyser you drove 3 hours to see might not erupt. The overlook you hiked at dawn might be buried in steam. The parking lot might be full. The rain might not stop. And then on an empty road at 8:30 in the evening, a bison will walk out of the trees. I was just driving. Windows up, no music, thinking about getting back to Willie. The roads were twisty through the pine trees. There were no other cars. And it doesn't get dark here until about 10 p.m. But the day was winding down, and so was I. 5 hours of hiking, 5 days of everything Yellowstone had thrown at me so far. I was done. But then something big moved in the trees, and my foot went to the brake before my brain caught up. And out of the pines, this enormous brown shape emerged. He was taller than my car, and he majestically meandered past me, slowly, gracefully, with complete purpose, like he had every right to be there, because he does. He looked at me. I didn't reach for my camera. I didn't even think about it. I just watched. He crossed the road, and when he reached the other side, he stopped, and he turned around, and I swear he nodded at me. It was a Lion King moment on an empty road in Yellowstone at 8:30 in the evening. I just sat there. That's when I knew this place had gotten to me. My name is Nancy, and I've been living full-time in my RV for over 3 years. I've covered almost 20,000 miles across 28 states. I've camped in deserts, forests, on the edge of canyons, and on the banks of rivers. I've done this alone with my Shih Tzu Willie as my co-pilot, building a life I designed from scratch. My home base is in Orlando. I know what it means to be surrounded by manufactured wonder. Theme parks, laser shows, fabricated experiences designed to make you feel something on a schedule. And Yellowstone is nothing like that. Yellowstone doesn't perform for you on a schedule. It doesn't care what time you showed up or how far you drove to get here. It exists on its own terms, on its own timeline, and if you're lucky, and if you're patient, it lets you in. This is not a highlights reel. This is not a travel guide. This is what it actually felt like to spend 9 days in one of the most extraordinary places on earth when the park decided it wasn't done with me yet. This week, I'm going to do something a little different. No video clips, no B-roll, no footage. Just me and this story. Because some experiences deserve to be told before they're shown. One day I'll take you back to Yellowstone with all the footage, all the insider tips, everything you need to plan your own visit. But this week, this is just the story. I actually arrived in Yellowstone a few days before I checked into Grant Village. I was staying just 2 miles south of the entrance, and I used those days the way I always try to use the days before I move into a park. Unhurried, unplanned, just wandering. I went to see Old Faithful on a sunny afternoon with light crowds. I found a front row seat and waited with strangers on benches, all of us trading wildlife stories while we watched the clock. There's something about waiting for a geyser with people you've never met. Everyone equal, everyone patient, and everyone just there. When it finally erupted, I'll be honest with you, it wasn't as big as I expected. Some eruptions are larger than others, but I was there, front row. After 3 years of driving towards this moment, I was there. On the way in, Beehive Geyser erupted right in the parking lot while I was getting out of my car. I didn't even think to grab my camera. I just stood there with my mouth open. That has happened a lot on this trip. Elk on the side of the road, a bison on a trail, a geyser in a parking lot. Yellowstone keeps ambushing you when your hands are empty. I went to Moose Falls, a short hike through the pines to a waterfall that most people drive right past on their way into the park. I went to Lewis Falls, where the water drops automatically into a canyon and the mist hits your face before you even reach the railing. I went to West Thumb Geyser Basin in the cold, where thermal features sit right on the edge of Yellowstone Lake, and the steam rises off the water like the lake itself is alive. Those were good days, quiet days, days where I felt like I had the whole park to myself. I had no idea what was coming. When I checked into Grant Village, it was sunny and 70 degrees. I was wearing shorts and a t-shirt. 2 hours later, the rain began, and it didn't stop for 4 days, unless it was snowing. Willie spent most of the day curled up in his bed and his little sweater, watching me watch the weather app. Each day got colder. The temperature dropped to 27 overnight, and I woke up to a rig that felt cold all the way through. That particular kind of cold that gets into everything. Your jacket, your blankets, the air you breathe, and your bones. On day 4, as snow was gently falling through the pine trees, a ranger knocked on my door at 1:30 in the afternoon. They were evacuating the loop next to me for bear activity. I smiled, said thank you, and closed the door. Just another Tuesday in Yellowstone. Now, no sun means no solar power, and for 5 days in Yellowstone, there was no sun. I was surrounded by 70-foot pine trees at almost 8,000 feet of elevation, in the middle of a weather system that stretched hundreds of miles in every direction. There was nowhere to go. No sun anywhere within reach. Just me, Willie in his sweater, and a battery percentage that kept dropping, and a park full of wonders I couldn't get to because I was managing a power crisis instead. I spent those 3 days watching my system numbers, unplugging everything I didn't absolutely need, and walking Willie with bear spray at my side and a whistle. Only during daylight hours, staying close to the rig. In the evenings, we didn't go far. The bear activity next door had a way of keeping you humble. There were moments where I sat and looked out at the window at the gray rain and thought, is this what I drove all the way from Florida for? And then Yellowstone started to answer. Nothing prepared me for what it actually feels like to stand next to something that is boiling out of the earth. The first thing people warn you about is the smell. Sulfur, like rotten eggs. And yes, it's there, but honestly, it wasn't as bad as I expected. What I was completely unprepared for was the warmth. After 5 days of cold rain and dropping temperatures, walking into a cloud of geothermal steam felt like someone had turned on a heating vent just for me. The mist settled on my hair, my jacket, and my skin, and I just stood there breathing it in, not moving, not reaching for the camera, just standing in the warmth that the earth was offering up from somewhere far below my feet. West Thumb Geyser Basin was only 15 minutes from my campsite. I drove up there twice after dinner, after the day visitors had gone home and the parking lot was nearly empty. Not for the photography, not for the content, just to stand in the warm steam at the edge of Yellowstone Lake and feel the heat. And apparently, I wasn't the only one with that idea. Several bison had settled right at the edge of Sour Lake in the mud volcano area. Not in the water, just close enough to feel the warmth rising off it. Enormous animals, completely unbothered. The water near them was boiling. The sulfur smell was strong. They could not have cared less. I bonded with those bison as I stood there watching them and thought, we are doing exactly the same thing right now, finding warmth wherever Yellowstone is offering it. And then you begin to understand the power of the earth beneath you, how Yellowstone is constantly changing. Dragon's Mouth Spring in the mud volcano area is where it really hit me. You hear it before you see it. A deep, rhythmic churning, like something massive breathing in a cave. And then the steam hits you, and you're at the edge of a dark cave opening in the hillside where the water is surging, retreating, surging again, bubbling up, and every exhale sends a cloud of steam rolling out over the boardwalk. The ground beneath your feet doesn't feel stable, not because it's moving, but because you know what's underneath it. You know what's down there, and Dragon's Mouth is Yellowstone's way of making sure you never forget. I stood at the railing for a long time, not thinking about anything particular, just listening to the earth breathe. People have been coming to Yellowstone for a very long time, long before the highways, before the RVs, before the Instagram posts and GPS coordinates. They came by stagecoach and then by train, stopping at each of the original 5 lodges, one after another, making their way through the park the only way they could. Thousands of them, eventually millions, all of them wanting to do the same thing I did, to see this place, to see what it feels like to stand something next to this wild and this old and this alive. Walking into the Old Faithful Inn felt like joining that line of history. The tour was led by a woman, Ruth, who has worked there for 37 years. She knew every corner of that building the way you know a house you grew up in, not just the facts of it, but the feeling of it. The inn was built in 1904 by a 29-year-old self-taught architect named Robert Reamer, his first hotel job. And what he built using materials harvested right here in the park is the largest log structure in the world. Everything is lodgepole pine. The walls, the balconies, enormous uprights in the lobby, and the lobby rises 75 feet, the same height as one of those pines. Reamer wanted you to feel like you were still in the forest even when you were inside. Ruth took us into one of the original rooms. No private bathroom, simple wood paneling, a soft bed, a window that looked out at the trees. And I stood in that room and I felt something I didn't expect. The Old Faithful Inn opened in 1904. The same year my great-aunt's house was built in Maine. I spent summers there as a child, every summer, year after year, in a house that felt old and solid and permanent. The solid but creaky staircase, the wood paneling, the simple furniture, the particular quality of light shining through the windows. Standing in that room, I was 8 years old again. One little boy on the tour noticed that the room numbers weren't sequential, and he was right. When they added the private bathrooms over the years, the room count went down. The numbers just never caught up. That little boy was paying better attention than most adults. Next, of course, I want to talk about the ranger programs. I attend them wherever I go, every national park, every time there's one scheduled, and every single one has been worth it. They are intimate in a way that nothing else in a national park is. Maybe 25 people in a room, every age, every background, all genuinely curious, genuinely happy to be there, like a small group of people who've all found the same quiet secret that the crowds outside somehow missed. And one rainy evening, I went to a ranger program expecting an outdoor seat in the cold. And I walked into a heated auditorium. After 5 days of cold and rain and everything that had happened, I almost cried. This ranger opened his talk with current earthquakes happening around the world, Japan, Venezuela, and right here in Yellowstone. I had been off the news for days, and suddenly I was sitting in a warm room hearing about disasters happening right now on the same earth I was standing on. And he said that he knew exactly when the next earthquake was going to happen. And he counted down from 5. Nothing happened, but it could have, and that was the point. He talked about a 1959 7.5 earthquake in the middle of the night. An entire mountainside here at Yellowstone collapsed into Madison River in minutes, and 28 people were killed. Some are still buried there today. And Earthquake Lake was created overnight. Like every ranger program I've attended this year, I left wanting to know more, wanting to drive to Earthquake Lake and stand where it happened, to see the scar close up. That's what a great ranger program does. It doesn't just inform you, it sends you somewhere. Go to a ranger program. Whatever park you're in, whatever the topic, just go. You won't regret it. The next morning, driving to Norris Geyser Basin, I could see the scar on the hillside from the road, still visible after all these years, the place where the mountain came down. Most people drive right by it. Now I couldn't look away. The Firehole Canyon Drive is one of the most beautiful roads I've ever driven. A short one-way road that most visitors skip entirely. The canyon walls rise up on both sides. The Firehole River runs alongside you, and the whole thing feels completely separate from the rest of the park. Quieter, more intimate, like a secret Yellowstone tucked inside the regular one. A bison was standing at the entrance when I arrived. Just sitting there, massive and unhurried, like he was taking tickets. I waited. He did not move. Eventually, he decided I could pass. You can't plan Yellowstone. You just show up and hope. One evening, driving back along Yellowstone Lake, I had the windows cracked even though it was cold. The rain had stopped, the light was going flat, and I was tired. And then I noticed it. Every 25 feet or so along the edge of the lake, a small column of steam rising up out of the water, and then another, and then another. The whole surface looked like it was breathing. In perfect intervals, as far as I could see, the lake was exhaling. These aren't on any map. You can't reach them from the road. Most people drive right past them. They're geysers sitting in the lake, doing what they've done for thousands of years, completely indifferent whether to anyone is watching. You can only see them when the conditions are exactly right, when the air is cold enough and the light is low enough that each little column of steam catches the last of the day. On that particular evening, on one of the coldest and grayest days of my trip, every single one of them was visible. I pulled over and just sat there and watched Yellowstone Lake breathe. So here's what I know about Yellowstone so far. It will not perform for you. It will not arrange itself to fit your schedule or your shot list or your expectations. The geyser you drove 3 hours to see might not erupt. The overlook you hiked at dawn might be buried in steam. The parking lot might be full. The rain might not stop. And then on an empty road at 8:30 in the evening, a bison will walk out of the trees. He'll be taller than your car. He'll move with a slowness and a grace that makes everything around him feel rushed and small. He'll cross the road and stop on the other side and look back at you. And I swear, he'll nod. And you won't reach for your camera, because after everything this place has thrown at you, the rain, the cold, the bears next door, the batteries draining in the dark, the steam you stood in just to feel warm, the lake breathing at dusk, the mountain scar you finally saw with your own eyes, you will understand that some moments are not meant to be captured. Some moments are just meant to be lived and kept as a story to tell, like my story today. I hope this has given you a reason to go to Yellowstone, not to check it off a list, but to stay long enough for Yellowstone to find you, because it will. On an empty road, at the edge of a boiling lake, in a warm auditorium on a rainy night, or at the railing of a boardwalk listening to the earth breathe. It will find you. I'm Nancy. This is Making My Own Lane, and I'll see you next week from the road.